A new classroom ban in France on clothing defined by the state as religious. The government says it's to defend the country's strict secularism. Muslims believe it's a targeted attack on fundamental freedoms. Why is the issue so contentious, both for and against? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Folly Thibault. A new school year will begin in France on Monday, and so does a new government ban on what it considers religious clothing. Abayas worn by female Muslims and the khamis by males will be barred from state classrooms. The French education minister says students wearing them to school won't be allowed into classes, but will be instead sent for a discussion on their choice of clothing. The ministerial decision is generating plenty of discussion with widely differing views. We'll be exploring many of them with our guests shortly, but what do people think in France? Here's our Paris correspondent, Natasha Butler.
Well, there's been a lot of reaction to the French government's decision to ban abayas and khamis in schools. The education minister, Gabriel Attal, says the reason behind the ban is that he says that these garments reveal a religious identity, and religious signs and symbols have long been banned in French schools under France's very strict secular laws. Well, politicians on the right and far right have welcomed the news. They've long asked for the ban. One prominent far-right politician says that wearing these sort of garments at schools is, as far as he's concerned, an Islamic provocation, he says. But politicians on the left have said that this is just another example of Islamophobia from President Emmanuel Macron's government. And this is just a PR stunt to try and distract from the real issues that there are, they say, in the education system. In terms of public opinion, well, a recent opinion poll suggests that most people in France do support the ban. Teachers' unions certainly say that they welcome the clarity on the issue. They say it's going to make their life easier. But what we are seeing also is a number of young people on social media, on social networks, talking about perhaps wearing long tunics, long flowing dresses when schools go back next week, because they say that as far as they are concerned, abayas and khamis are just cultural and fashion statements, and they should be able to wear what they want. Natasha Butler for Inside Story, Paris.
I think educational institutions are made for us to study and learn, and as long as it's secular, it should be respected. Then you can do whatever you want at home, that's all. One's freedoms stop at the boundary of others.
There's no law about men's bodies. I can walk around in my pants if I want, or topless. No one will ever comment on me. I don't feel any particular moral pressure unless I start looking like a woman. But from a legal point of view, I'm not forbidden to do anything.
I think there are more urgent issues to deal with at the moment. We've been talking about it for 40 years. It started with a headscarf, then it was the bikini, and now it's the abaya.
Well, let's look in a bit more detail into the background to all of this. France imposes a strict brand of secularism known as laïcité for separation between the state and religion. A strict ban on religious symbols in schools began in the 19th century to prevent Catholic influence in public education. In 2004, President Jacques Chirac's government banned headscarves worn by Muslims from state schools and buildings and dress associated with other faiths. They include Jewish kippah caps or yarmulkes and large Christian crosses. 6 years later, France became the first European country to bring in a ban on full-face veils in public spaces. The European Court of Human Rights upheld the so-called burqa ban. A year later, President Nicolas Sarkozy's government banned the wearing of the hijab and Sikh turbans in classrooms. In 2016, several French cities and towns banned burkinis, the full-body bathing suit worn by some Muslim women. Those bans were later overturned, however. Well, let's bring in our guest for today's Inside Story. Loubna Reguig is the national president of the Muslim Students of France group. She joins us from Roubaix. In the French port of Saint-Malo is Jacques Reland. He's senior research fellow at the Global Policy Institute. And in London is Rainbow Murray. She's professor of politics at Queen Mary University of London. A warm welcome to you all. Thank you very much for joining us. Loubna, let me start with you. The French Education Minister, Gabriel Attal, says the abaya has no place in our schools. What do you respond?
Firstly, thank you very much. Firstly, to really grasp the essence of this controversy, a few image needs to be given. For the past 20 years, there was a constant pressure on Muslim women to police their bodies and how and what they decide to show with it. So as it was shown, it was headscarf, then bikinis, then bandanas, and now it's long dresses. So let's use this word, it's about long dresses. Because when you look on the ground, what is stopped is long dresses, long coats, long skirts. It's not really about abaya. Abaya is one word that is used to talk about all these things. And that actually shows how it's actually not about secularism. Because behind abaya, what is an abaya? Anyone who look on the internet can see that an abaya is just a cultural garment from the Middle East. So it's not a religious garment. So when Gabriel Attal, as you said, is say that abaya has no place in schools, what is he really talking about? Is he talking about just a fashion statement, just a dress, all dress not allowed in schools? Or is he talking about something religious? And again, it's not the case. So I think it would be great, and I emphasize on that what we are talking about right now is not about religious garment in schools. It's about controlling Muslim women attire.
All right. Jacques Reland, let me come to you. You are in favor of this ban, I understand. Why?
Why? Because for the same reason as the ban on the headscarf in 2004, which it's to respect the law of secularity in France, which states a clear separation between religion and the state. And it's, as we know, you have to understand, because I know many people in the world, I have friends in England and elsewhere, don't understand the French attitude to the ban or attitude to religious symbols in schools. It's because at the base, France is a political construct based on the principles liberté, égalité, fraternité. France is not an ethnic concept, not a religious concept. And the French Republic was established as a result of a fight against religion, under the principle that the law of the people is more important than the law of God. It's at the core of the French identity, and the school is there seen as the church of the Republic. The Republic, the principles of the Republic are a kind of religion, and the school, it's church. And
right.
in its church, you have to respect certain rules, such as laicity. So I understand the fact that some people say that the abaya, yes, the abaya is not initially a religious garment, but the fact that it is worn
how does it exactly violate? How does the abaya exactly violate the secular rules of France?
Because it has acquired a religious dimension. It's not initially a religious dress. Even the Muslim Council says it's not a religious dress, but it has acquired a religious dimension because it is worn exclusively or most exclusively by young Muslim girls, and it is seen.
But who defines? Isn't it the role of religious authorities to define whether a garment represents a religion or not? Here, in this case, the Muslim Council, as you say, has said that the abaya is tied to Arab culture, but is misrepresented as a Muslim religious sign, that it isn't, in fact, a Muslim religious sign. So who decides what's a religious sign and what isn't?
Themselves, because they see it as an attack on Islam and Muslim women. So that's.
Let me ask Loubna for her thoughts before I bring Rainbow into the conversation. Loubna, your thoughts. Just respond to what Jacques has just said before I bring in Rainbow to the conversation.
I find that super funny. I think he never talked to any Muslim woman, because as a woman, I never saw abaya as an Islamic statement or as a religious garment, as I never worn it. So thinking that we see it as an attack to Islam is false. What we see is an attack on Muslim women, on Muslim girls. So 14, 15, 16 years old girls who are told by white men what they have to wear and what they don't have to wear. Small young girls who are told this dress doesn't show you curves enough, this shirt doesn't show you. That's what it's about. That's why we are concerned. It's because it's harassment. I'm sorry, it's traumatizing when a guy an old man come and with his authority power tell you, you're not coming to school if your shirt is not short enough and I don't see your ass. And that's a testimony it exists.
Okay.
It's not about Islam. Put it out of the conversation.
Yeah, I think we can't use the A word, but let's try and avoid using it. Rainbow, let me bring you into the conversation. France, of course, has been long preoccupied with the proper place of religion in public life. Is this new ban, in your view, justified? Does it align with the spirit of secularism, which, as we've heard, is a very sensitive topic in France?
I don't think it does. The spirit of secularism was to reinforce French identity and to protect it from external influence, initially for Catholicism, to remove the papal influence from Rome and focus on French identity. And since then, it has been used increasingly as a weapon within cultural wars to protect French identity from a perceived internal threat of other religions which have taken an increasing hold in France. But as Loubna very fairly said, this is not religious dress. This is a way of imposing yet another restriction on the way that Muslim women are allowed to dress, which there is a long tradition of in France. It's often quite paternalist. It's sometimes a bit white saviour, but it's always about white men telling Muslim women what they are and aren't allowed to wear. And I don't think this is about secularism anymore. I think it is about culture wars.
Jacques Reland, your thoughts. How do you enforce such a ban? How do you ask a school to decide what is an abaya and what is a long dress?
That's a good question. And that's why actually the demand for a ban initially came for headmasters in schools who realized that there was a growing number of incidents of that kind, if you can call it incident, of women arriving, and mostly Muslim women arriving, wearing these very long garments, which to everyone else seem to have a religious identity, whether it is not an officially religious one, it has a certain religious dimension. You can't deny it, otherwise you would not consider this ban as an attack on Muslims and on Islam. And the number of incidents has been growing in the last year. It increased by 120%. Okay, it's not a huge number, but the headmasters wanted to have a clear position, to be able to decide whether this young girl is wearing it as a provocation or whether it is just part of fashion sense for now. The fact that now there will be a law, it will make it easier for head teachers to enforce a ban on that and to promote before a dialogue, asking, I think the law will specify that you will have to have a dialogue and see what the motivation is. But it is quite obvious. You have to be that. It is part, the fact that it is a growing trend now. It's not just a fashion trend. It's seen again. And the French are very sensitive to the threat of Islamism and radical Islamism. We've paid a very heavy price for radical Islamism. And therefore, we don't want anything which challenges an Islamist challenge to our basic principles. And that's the end of it.
Loubna, let me ask you for your reaction to what Jacques just said there. And he's right in saying that this ban has been welcomed by some school unions who say there's been an increase in loose-fitting, full-body robes, and they can't decide whether these constitute ostentatious religious symbols. What do you respond to that?
Firstly, well welcomed by who? I would say right-wing. Secondly, large outfit. I don't think he has Instagram, but look into it. It's actually the fashion nowadays. Now, he said that it's going to make it easier for headmasters, but I'm sorry, but it's going to make it worse because there are two dangers to this law. First danger is racial profiling, because you said, it's just the Muslim women who wear it. How do you know they are women? They are Muslim? How do you gonna know that? Unfortunately, the girls who are arrested, stopped and harassed, are black, are Arabs, Turkish, Asian, that's the girl that we are talking about. So what is this going to make? It's going to make a racial profiling. Who do we perceive as Muslim? Who do we think are Muslim? And then, oh, the dress is not okay on you, but on a white girl, it's going to be okay because she's not Muslim. You are. And then the second problem is the door on the law. As you mentioned earlier, it should be the religious authority who say what is religious and what is not. But now the government is opening a door where the government can't say, and it's quite paradoxical from a laic country to decide what is religious and what is not. So this is problematic because in the future, what is going to be? Is it going to be, I don't know, earrings? Is it going to be, I don't know, Moroccan slippers? Why not the tea as well? Like, they're going to be the one who decide what is religious and what is not. And it's crazy.
Jacques, your response to that, how do you deal with the issue of racial profiling, as Loubna says, because this would give rise to racial profiling? How do you decide who's a Muslim woman and who's not? And therefore, how do you address the concerns that the law may be discriminatory against Muslim women?
The law also forbids the wearing of big crosses. The law forbids the wearing of kippas. I know there's religious sides, but this argument that the ayaba has no religious dimension, for me, is the abaya is for me ill-founded. I think it is the fact as it is worn by Muslim girls, and I don't, I think I don't know any other cases. And there's no problem. In school, we don't. Abaya is a very light garment. You can wear it in the streets, no problem. You can put it in your school bag. It doesn't take much space. When you're at school, you can take it off and show your other clothing. And then when you come out of school, you put it back on. No problem. It's just in school. It has, I'm afraid, in spite of what Loubna was saying, it has a religious dimension, or it has acquired a religious and a politically religious dimension. I would say more than a religious dimension. It has acquired a political dimension. It has become a way to kind of again challenge by radical Islam on the basic principles of the French Republic.
Okay, Rainbow, I see you there shaking your head, and so I want to bring you back into the conversation. Jacques says the abaya has acquired a political, religious dimension.
I think that's paranoia. I think it's a dress choice. And I think that there's a lot of men telling women what they can and can't wear. And I think it's a little egregious, actually, to oblige a woman to undress, to remove clothing that she feels safe and comfortable in, especially in a context of sexual harassment, which is a real issue in France. I'm not surprised that some people prefer to dress more modestly. And are we going to say to non-Muslim women now that they also can't wear a dress beyond a certain length or a skirt beyond a certain length? Because this isn't a religious symbol, it's a garment. Right. And so where do you draw the line?
Right. And Jacques, Rainbow, also mentioned the context, the recent context in France, and he talked about radical Islam and the history of the recent attacks and so forth in France as perhaps a response and a reaction to such laws being enacted. What do you say to that?
You have to take into account. So
we're saying the correct response is to make women wear less. That doesn't make sense. How does that address the issue?
Jacques, how does it address the issue of what you described as radical Islam?
You were talking about the political context, and you have to take into account the political context. I live in France. I watch the television, and I see how the right wing, the far right, the National Front, and the hard wing of the Republicans have been debating this issue for weeks. You have debates on CNews and other channels, and it is a challenge to the government. And don't forget that in Europe...
So is the government then doing all this also to appeal to right-wing voters, perhaps, Jacques?
Yeah, but the right-wing voters would like it to be banned in the street, like they wanted to ban the headscarf in the street. They wanted to ban all garments. But in France, it's just in the school, and the government is making these principles quite clear. In the street, in university, you wear what you want. But when you are in a school, you have to adopt a certain code of behavior. In British schools, they have uniforms. So that's why some people even are calling for the need for uniforms. And it is made on the principle of equality of all school pupils in the class. You don't want, you're all the same.
Let's allow Loubna to respond.
There were so many things. I think firstly, he never saw an abaya because it's just a long dress. And I don't understand why he's like, yeah, you can't put your abaya in your bag or whatever. It's just a long dress. Like, I don't know what is the problem. Secondly, he kept talking about like Islamism. It's just like, I'm sorry, but like a ghost that right wing keeps like showing around, etc. But there is another history that France seems to forget and that we should all remember, is that from 1935, the French army used as a methodology and one of its technique and tactic to kill the rebellion, Algerian rebellion, what we called invading campaigns. So what they did is, because they wanted to hit the Algerian society in their context, they would do campaigns where they invade the women. And I think that, unfortunately, even if the motives changed and they don't have the same intention anymore, the same tactics keeps leaving. They keep using the women, the Muslim women body as a battleground for I don't know what. To be honest, I don't know what we can answer to that. There's like nothing.
Rainbow.
I would like to add that in 2004, when the ban on headscarf was pronounced, we had countless debates. Since then, there's been no problem with the headscarf. Everyone has come to accept these principles. And I think it will be the same thing. This law will bring a certain peace and will allow head teachers to be able to act in the best interest of their pupils.
Loubna, Jacques says there's been no problem at all since the headscarf law was enacted.
No, that's not true, because even I went to school, right? And I still remember the humiliation of having to get rid of my hijab each morning before going to school. So I don't think that it was simple, it was easy. It's still, to this day, hard. And I think, you know what, he's talking about 2004. I think it's interesting that he's talking about it, because soon it's going to be the 20 years anniversary. Rather than creating new rules, maybe the government should think back on the decision he made. Maybe he should come back to the law of 1905, the real laicity law that says that the state is separated from the religion and that the public doesn't have to be neutral. It's the state that has to be.
Rainbow makes an Loubna makes an interesting point when she says that there are people who say that this concept of laïcité, which was created in 1905, is changing, where once it was more of a guarantee of freedom of conscience and religion, where the state didn't get involved, and now the state appears to be getting more involved and telling French citizens the way they should act, the way they should dress, and that France is becoming, therefore, more homogenous rather than more diverse.
Yes, and in some respects, it's almost becoming authoritarian in the way that it's controlling behaviour rather than emancipating people. And this amounts to what I would call a false universalism, that the idea is to put everybody on an equal footing, everyone conforming to the French universal citizen. But of course, the French universal citizen is Christian, is white, is male. And so it's not that everyone's being treated the same, it's that everyone is expecting to conform to a single model, which forces some people to stray quite significantly from their own culture, while others expect everyone else to assimilate to theirs. And so it's quite a discriminatory model, and rather than including groups, it creates a sense of rejection and isolation.
Okay, Jacques, are there alternative solutions, you think, that could address the concerns being raised without infringing on individual rights and on Muslim women's rights?
Any alternatives? I mean, I don't know. The people were talking here about challenging the laicity law of 1905. I think that's out of the question. The laicity law is seen by the French as part of our identity, along with our culture and our welfare system and our language. So that one of the four.
But has the French identity and culture not evolved since 1905?
And yes, I agree. There's a lot of discrimination in France. There are other problems. our universalist model is not perfect for minorities. It's not economically perfect. We can see it as a result of dissatisfaction. There are problems in French society, and we tried under this universalist model to disguise the fact that there is racism and discrimination in our society. True, yes, but there are other fields to combat it. I think here we were talking about abaya in school and only in school, and I think the French school must remain the hotbed, the rock on which the French basic republican principles are based. It is, as I repeat, our church. You don't go into religious establishments where religious anything. It's the same for French schools. The other problems, France is also racist discrimination. I agree. There are socio-economic problems which have to be dealt with. And that's the more important. I think making a big meal out of this law, which I can understand why, is misplaced. The real issue for the young Muslim women and Muslim men is their integration into society and the economy. And actually, in spite of what everyone says, integration is taking place and the situation is improving in spite of it's still not fully satisfactory. And maybe the French model, I know that minorities prefer the English model. They can carry on with the same culture. But France has this tradition of assimilation, which was wrong, but integration. France has always been a country of immigration, and we've integrated millions of immigrants over the years through work and religion, etc.
Let's give Loubna the final word, Jacques, if we can, because we're almost towards the end of our show here. Loubna, I'll give you the last word. Jacques says this is really a non-issue and that there are other more important, more pressing issues like socioeconomic issues that should be talked about rather than this issue of abayas being banned in classrooms. What do you respond?
He's saying that because he's not touched by it. It's a white male old who is saying, banning the controlling how women dress is not a problem. Yes, it's not a problem for you, but it's for me. And he said that there is racism and there is discrimination. How do you deal with it? Not by adding more, by trying to maybe communicate with the population, make it easier for them, not by adding more and more discrimination, because this is just a Pandora box. You're opening it for the dress, you opened it for the hijab, now you're going to open it for something else. It's never ending. It's always the women body that the government, the French government, that is trying to dominate, to control. Maybe you should let go. Maybe that's how you're going to find a solution.
Thank you so much. We'll leave it there. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll leave it there. Thank you for a great conversation. Loubna Reguig, Jacques Reland, Rainbow Murray, thank you for your time. And thank you, too, for watching. You can always watch this program again anytime by visiting our website at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. Of course, you can join the conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter. Our handle is at AJ Inside Story. From me, Folly, Thibault, and the whole team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.